Hello, hello. Welcome for another episode of the Author Spotlight. Hey, it's the host with the motion, man, Darren M. Palmer, again with you for this episode where I go behind the scenes with best-selling authors across the globe who are making a difference locally and globally. I have Mr. Kevin Roberts on today. I'm going to share a little bit about Kevin. He has spent a good deal of his adult life coming to terms with his own ADHD and cyber addiction. He has a master's degree in ADHD and addiction studies from Antioch University. He has trained therapists, students, physicians, nurses, teachers, parents, and school administrators on the perils of overuse of the internet and video games. As well as ADHD, he has developed a number of innovative programs such as Training Your Dragons, summer camps that empower ADHD children, including intensive training to their families. His ADHD empowerment groups have been featured on television programs and other media outlets. A sought-after speaker, Roberts has given lectures and workshops around the world. He has recently spoken in the United Kingdom, Canada, Holland, and Poland. He speaks 5 languages fluently. He has taken groups of young people and their families to Poland to visit Schindler's List and other Holocaust sites. Hey, I welcome you, Kevin Roberts. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Darren. That was a really long introduction, and I hope I can live up to expectations. It's great to be here. And, you said you're the host with the most. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing if that's true. I hope it's true.
Hey. It's a poor dog if you won't wag your own tail. They're just a little Southern vernacular there, young man. But
a Southern vernacular, where were you born?
Texas, Tejas, for those who know what it means.
Texas?
Yeah.
You were born in Texas? Okay, then we can speak Spanish too.
Yeah. Me gusta.
A mí me gusta también.
Sí, señor. All right. We back on the episode. I tell you, Kevin Roberts, keep it going. Kevin, if you don't mind, share with us a little bit because I read the list. But like I said, this is informal. I want them to know you. Let's take it back a little bit. Okay, with your book, why did you write the book that you currently have out? What made you go that route? With the languages that you have, the background that you have, you could have went so many different ways. Just share, why did you go this route?
Well, this is my 4th book that I brought out, and this one I'm self-publishing because I wanted to have control over it. Mm-hmm. This book is something that I put my entire life force in. It is something that I had to go to Poland 10 times. I had to go to the Czech Republic. I went to the archives at Auschwitz. I went to Oskar Schindler's hometown, which is now in the Czech Republic. And basically, Darren, the reason that I went on this adventure to write this particular book is because I watched the movie, which is being re-released on December 7th, Schindler's List. And there was one scene that I watched in the movie that made me suspect that Oskar Schindler had ADHD. And the scene was Oskar Schindler had gone to the Judenrat, the Jewish council, and he had this preposterous idea that he was going to get Jewish investors to finance him buying a factory. And incredulous, Yitzhak Stern, played by Ben Kingsley, says, "Mr. Schindler, let me understand. They put up all the money. I do all the work. What, if you don't mind my asking, would you do?" And Liam Neeson, playing Oskar Schindler, answers, "I'd make sure it's known the company was in business. I'd see that it had a certain panache. That's what I'm good at, not the work, the presentation." And as I watched that, I paused it because I watched it at home. I didn't go to the theaters. And I thought something strange, something familiar about that character. And as I researched his life, ADHD just drips from the details of his life. And what I wanted to do, Darren, was I wanted to come up with a book that made that case, made a compelling case for what I believe in my heart of hearts, but that also offered people who are ADHD and parents who have loved ones with ADHD, it offered them a blueprint, a roadmap for how they could raise an ADHD individual who, like Oskar Schindler, could go on to change the world.
Hey, that's amazing, man. I thank you too for the voices. I mean, I think we got something here special with Mr. Roberts here. And Mr. Roberts, I think about, for those who are listening, I just want y'all to take a
Please
moment.
call me Kevin, by the way. My father's Mr. Roberts. So
Oh, okay, okay. I'm sorry about that, Kevin.
I know you
Kevin.
got that Southern hospitality thing
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
I'm up in Detroit here, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. Detroit. Yeah. With that being said, I want the audience to take time and glean from what Kevin is sharing with us. Make sure you pay attention to the due diligence that he took. He didn't just come up with an idea and then just randomly write about what he thought it was about. He did his due diligence. He did his work. He made sure that he invested in the project. He took flights. He took his time. He took, he made a financial, so to see financially to make sure that he was able to prove his case to the best of his ability when he's creating content. So some of you out there, when it comes to writing a book, a lot of you are not understanding the sacrifice that it takes to write a book. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go in a cave and hibernate for years and, come out in no shade November, it's December now, and come out with a book. I'm not saying that, but make sure that you respect the process and honor your craft when you're creating content. And would you agree with that, Kevin, of the importance of doing your due diligence when you're writing a book, especially one like the one you're writing now, the newest one?
Well, yeah, and the one that I just brought out, and I've got two others that I'm working on. But yeah, look, it is a lot of work. You got people on, saying, "Oh, it's easy. Anybody can write a book." Well, you can write a book that's a pile of what. But if you want to write a good book, it takes multiple rounds of editing. I'm going to tell you something. This book, Schindler's Gift, How One Man Harnessed ADHD to Change the World, that's just come out. This book has had 4 different iterations. And the first one, I just wrote the history. It was very dry. And then I had a friend of mine named Jane Stewart, and Jane read it, and she says, well, it's interesting, but people who aren't majoring in history in college are not going to be able to get through it. It's too dry. So then, Darren, I went through and I had to rewrite it, and I changed it from a dry history, and then I made it a narrative, and then I developed the story. And in some cases, I took literary license to create a book that people could really relate to and to make it more in a conversational style. So I listened to her. And then I have another friend. He lives in London, Finchley. His name is Colin McGee. He's a psychologist. And Colin read it, and he said, well, you've done a great job on the history and the narrative, but I think that a lot of people who read this are going to want some step-by-step recommendations at the end of each chapter. And so at the end of each chapter, I wrote, it's a section, every chapter has it in the book, Raising Schindler. What are the steps? What's the blueprint? What's the roadmap? And that was based on Colin McGee's recommendations. And before this book was, I've had no less than 25 people who read, professional people, knowledgeable people who read, digested, and then made recommendations on this book. So I really like what you're saying. It is a significant process. And, as we're saying this, some of your listeners and viewers may be saying, well, gosh, that sounds like an enormous amount of work. It is. But don't give up, because this book took me 4 to 5 years to bring out. Don't give up. You got to keep going. And by the way, I was in the hospital for 2 months this year. And even in the hospital, I worked on this book. So if I can work on this book with a collapsed lung, you guys who are listening and watching me, you can get to work, you can keep getting busy, and you can do it. Just don't, you got to make it your best effort. You got to push forward.
Pushing forward is great, Kevin. I mean, that perseverance, the capital P with the perseverance, and and understanding that you can't give up in this process, because someone need what you have to share. You have someone out there who's, banging their head against a wall, so to speak. They're dealing with their child, wondering how to deal with ADHD, or even, it might be someone who's an adult who's wondering what's going on with them and wondering why they're having issues, whether it's in business or in the workplace, that you're about to tear up the cubicle. They don't know why. And so harnessing this is a great thing. But I want to bring out too as well, for those who are tuned in, make sure that you heard what Kevin shared with us of being open. and not getting offended, and being able to take constructive criticism. And so some of us, quote unquote, think that everyone is hating on us, and it's not actually hating on us. They're giving us sound advice that could be beneficial to us. So just like Kevin is harnessing ADHD, you want to harness your feelings and your emotions when you are deceiving yourself. Perception is your perception is your reality. When you get to thinking that someone's hating on you, Kevin could have easily said, "Oh, come on. I mean, I've got all the notes. You know, what do I need to listen to you for? I'm already an author already. You know, why should I listen to you?" Well, hey, somebody else got advice. Man, I've already went through this over 20 some times. You know, I already had somebody else come with it. I have the history down. I have a narrative. What more do you people want from me? And so then he was able to listen and then add the components to raising Schindler's. And so when you understand that it's about continuing to evolve, continuing to grow, not take it personal, willing to take the investment. And I can't leave this segment without sharing this. Here is a gentleman in the hospital and he's finding a way to write. But you can't stop watching your favorite sitcom for a few days or a few hours to make sure that you
or check Facebook.
There you go. There you go. So you're scrolling Instagram, you're on Facebook, but then at the same time, you're mad. And we'll just talk about real hating. Oh, it comes so easily to Kevin. He just can do it. He's just a prolific writer and he can do such amazing things out there. And I mean, he's just so educated when it comes to the process, but we missed the point that he works off his rear, or as my friends in the UK would say, he works off his arse. And I want you to make sure that we understand the importance of making sure you're staying focused and open to others pouring into you instead of thinking someone's hating on you or, you know, that they have ill will to you. That has changed the trajectory of his book significantly because he listened to wise counsel. You know, and with that being said, what has been your experience, Kevin, far as creating content? Because you created several books, you say you got some more in the pipeline. So with your schedule and you knowing several languages, how in the world, people are wondering, how does this guy find time to write? How does he create content? Is it early in the morning? Is it recording yourself? Share with us some of the secrets and hacks that you use.
Well, first of all, you know, I never thought of myself as a writer. Never thought of myself as a writer. But I want to go, before I go into that, I want to, you know, I wrote my first book that was, my first published book was called Cyber Junkie, Escape the Gaming and Internet Trap. And I wrote it. And when I wrote it, I was convinced that it was the greatest thing ever. I had written this book and I was so proud of myself. I was so pumped up. I was so excited. And I couldn't imagine that anybody would give me any feedback that was anything but glowing praise. So added to this, I ended up landing a publishing deal with Hazelden Publishing. It's a traditional publishing house. And that deal, you know, only emboldened me. But Hazelden hired an editor. And that editor, her name was Kathy Rolberg. If anybody out there needs a great editor, Kathy Rolberg is wonderful. And she sent me back that document. And I had never seen so many marks and red pen and comments on a document before. And it was flabbergasting. And I almost wanted to send it back and say, I'm not doing this. You either got to publish it the way I wrote it or we're done, you know, because we all have that emotional baggage that comes from school. So anyway, I decided that I'd give it a try. And so I went through and I made the changes that Kathy asked. And it took me many weeks to going, because I mean, it's a 200-page document. It took me many weeks of going through that. So Kathy, however, she was just trying to make, you know, do her job. But what she did was she made me a better writer because she pointed out things that I hadn't seen before. And so if you're a writer, one of the things that you got to do is you got to find a good editor, and you got to do what Darren just said. You got to be open to feedback, and you got to work on yourself enough so that you don't take it personally, and so that you realize an editor is trying to make you a better writer. Now, getting back to your content thing, how do I go about writing content? Well, Darren, they already know that I have ADHD, so that I struggle with attention and follow through and all that stuff. So how do I come up with an idea? Well, first of all, you got to write what you know. And I wrote Cyber Junkie because that was something that, the video game addiction and getting lost in the computer world, that was something that I knew. And so that was something that I was deeply ensconced in. And so that was easy. My second book, Movers, Dreamers, Risk Takers, Unlocking the Power of ADHD, that was also easy because that's what I've done professionally. However, I can't sit here and tell you that I have a process that I do every day. I think that probably if you took, two random writers, everybody's process would be different. I am a sprint writer. I will sometimes write every day for 2 weeks and write a massive amount of stuff. And then maybe a month, 6 weeks, 2 months after that, I write nothing. But what my process is I constantly have to check in with myself. There's constantly a voice in my head. I need to get some writing done. And, the house, which is where I am right now, is often just has distraction around every corner, whether it's on my computer, whether it's the TV, whether it's my phone, whatever, there's distraction all around. So one of the things that I do is there's a mall that's not too far from here. And I go there in the morning to the food court, and they get these really nice booths with cushions and stuff. And I sit there and I force myself to sit there for 3 hours and I just write. And when I write, I have two energies that I like to talk about with writing: the creator and the critic. And when I go to the mall on those mornings when I'm planning on getting a lot of writing done, I don't indulge the critic. I only let out the creator. Creator and critic are two different and distinct energies. Now, when I'm in the critic mode, I go somewhere else. I will often go to the local library. I will go to a cafe, but I try to let that mall space in that third floor food court, I try to let that be my creator space. Now, sometimes I work at home, but a lot of times when I'm home, I get distracted and I'm not productive. So I try different things. So try different things, keep doing it, keep persisting, and separate critic and creator. Like if you write a paragraph and then go back and judge the heck out of yourself and like, oh my God, that's terrible, that's horrible, what was I thinking? Most of the book, people like my writing. I get a lot of good feedback on my writing. But if they only knew the first draft of a paragraph that they really like, the first draft was horrible in comparison. But what they may not realize is that it was edited 10, 12, 15, 20, 50, 100 times. And not just by me, but by many other people. It's a process. It's a lot of layers. It's a textured process.
I love that. Creator and critic. They don't go well together.
They do not. The critic will shut down the creator every single time.
Every time. And for those who have did any work with us, that's one of the things that we share in the strategy call, any of our clients. And our first phase is exactly what Kevin shared. We tell people all the time, do not at all even think about trying to edit when you're creating. This is a creating space. Your whole first phase is just you're just creating. Just creating. And that also means for those who, especially in this beta testing world, I'm not saying nothing wrong with it, where you think every time you write a paragraph, you need to ask a family friend, a loved one, you need to ask your spouse, you need to ask your significant other, and all that right there, and you're getting all this feedback. No. Some of you are posting it online, and what do you think? And you hadn't put enough work in it. Did you hear about the layers? It's a texture process. And just like Kevin shared about, you got to make sure that you let the right person out. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. You got to make sure the right person is out at the right time. And once you have an understanding of the critic and the creator, you'll know when to let one or the other out. But don't try to let them live and be together. It's not going to work. It's a horrible thing. And when I think about you creating content, Kevin, Could you share with us, because you're dealing with a touchy subject that you've been able to harness yourself with ADHD? And so could you share some of the benefits of your work after all that you had persevered through to get the content out? Could you share whether it be testimonials or what it even mean for you being a person who has suffered with that yourself, to see the accolades by you actually even getting a book out? Most people struggle with this, but especially someone with ADHD, could you just share some of the benefits of being an author and the things that you wrote about and how it's impacted other people's lives?
Well, I've had families come up to me and tell me that I've changed their lives. I changed the way that they dealt with their children. I changed the way they thought about themselves and their relationship to others. And, I've had people come up to me and say, you saved our family. And so, that stuff just makes it all worthwhile. That's the kind of feedback that makes me want to write more, because I can't think of anything more worthwhile than getting a book down that people will read and that will benefit them, that will help them change their lives and change the lives of their loved ones for the better. So it's been one of the most rewarding and satisfying aspects of my life. And one of the things that has happened for me is I get asked to do public talks. I've been in Europe many times, and a lot of times organizations don't have a lot of money to give me for my speaking fees, but they always pay for my travel. So I like to look at it as free trips to Europe. I've been all over Europe speaking. I've been all over this country as well. And when you have a book, that you can sort of use it as your calling card. People take you seriously in a way that they may not if you don't have a book, because most of us understand that coming up with a book is like coming up with a work of art. I mean, it takes a remarkable amount of perseverance and persistence. And I mean, there are people who are naturally gifted at that, but most of us have to really work at it.
It's just like a labor of love, what I like to describe it, Kevin. Just like giving birth, it might be a process that tears at you, but at the end of the day, when you're able to look at that beautiful child that you gave birth to, is similar to with a book. But, I'm not a woman, so I can't tell you the whole thing. But being a father, I can share that is an amazing point of all the stuff you go through to get to that point, to see that child, but also the benefits, and you're giving life to people, because more than that, I like to call it the legacy piece, because the work that Kevin's doing, all that time that he's doing, all those edits, those who have contributed and gave him wise counsel, just think about it. We don't even know the stories of individuals who have benefited by the advice or the expertise that Kevin has shared in his books, by having something tangible and giving them steps that they can implement in their own personal lives, is monumental for years to come. Like you said, think about what kid is staying out of prison because now the parents or those in the classroom know how to work with them, instead of them being ostracized and just put in a hall or shut off somewhere, or sent off, or a marriage breaking up because of these issues. And so when we look at this work that Kevin's saying, don't just think of it as that little four-letter word or whatnot, of the acronym. Realize that this is lives to being changed for years. It's a big difference than a kid being in prison, than a kid who knows how to harness this energy that he has and be creative and be an asset to society instead of a menace to society. So I want to commend you and thank you so much for what you're doing, this life-changing work. It's not a reason that they're just flying you out for no reason. It's a reason because you're changing lives. And some might not even read the book, but the advice from a neighbor or someone at a PTO meeting, and they're sharing, this is what we did for Johnny, and this would help, or this would work. And so when we see individuals like Kevin and the work that he's doing around the world, I want those who are listening, if I pass it back on to Kevin, to think about, what are you hoarding that could change lives for generations to come? That's what I want you to think about. Whenever you can't get through, I deal with the same thing with my writing. It's like, man, sometimes I'm gonna be honest, it sucks. I'm thinking I could be doing something else. I got businesses to run, other things I could be doing. But when I get those testimonials or those stories, just like Kevin gets, and they're sharing with you, man, I read your book. You didn't know I was going through divorce. I had a son who had autism in the 7th grade. I had twin boys who were in the 1st grade. I was going through a divorce. I was a non-traditional student. but now I got a degree. I was able to graduate. I'm doing a commencement speech. Is already, if I can use an excerpt out of your book to show how I came over. And so that's the thing that you realize, no matter what my ethnic background is, no matter what region of the world I'm from, somebody of the opposite persuasion from a different part of the world was able to benefit from one of my worst books I ever did. So it changes your mindset and your psyche when you get in that rut of those tight spots, or what we call in our world, you have writer's block. It allows for you to get back on the horse, no pun intended, and get back to writing and doing the things that you need to do. So Kevin, I know they're wondering, how can I get his books? How can I connect with him? How can we have him to come speak at our school or speak at our conference? Could you share that information with people, how they can connect with you?
Sure. If people want to connect with me, the easiest way is to go to my website, www.kevinjroberts.net. Don't forget the J. So it's Kevin J. Roberts, and it's not .com, it's kevinjroberts.net.
Okay.
And they can certainly email me there, kevin@kevinjroberts.net. But just go to the website. It's got links to all my books. You can find all my books on Amazon. There's a bunch of blog posts there. And there we have it. I do parent coaching, I do public speaking, and I do coaching for young people as well. And, you know, by the way, a lot of my ADHD folks are adults with whom I'm working on writing. So I've got somebody who's working on his PhD in psychology right now. I got another person who's working on his master's in marriage counseling.
Wow.
So, you know, so there's a lot of different ways that this shows up. Listen, Darren, I want to say I really appreciate what you do, and I appreciate this. There's an audience out there of people who are committed to the writing process and committed to walking through that fire and becoming more effective and more impactful human beings. So blessings to you and what you do and to your audience. And thank you so much for having me on.
Anytime. Thank you, Kevin. We really have learned a lot. I know I have notes. I got some things that I'm going to implement myself in the process and things that I'm going to share with our audience as well. But for those of you who tuned in, I want to let you know that you all are the real MVPs. You chose today to improve yourself and continue to evolve. Until next time, remember, this is the year for your new book.